Here's some of the headlines. Armed man targets D.C. restaurant that faced violent threats because of fake news pushed by the right. And police fake news story led gunman to popular D.C. pizzeria. My next guest says the self-righteous media should be pointing the finger of blame at themselves for pushing the biggest fake news story of them all, President-elect Trump not having a path to victory. President-elect Trump called the media out about it during his thank you tour.
The people back there, the extremely dishonest press, they didn't want to call it. We're leading by so much that it's impossible. I lost every other vote, and they refused to call. How about, how dishonest? How about when a major anchor who hosted a debate started crying when she realized that we won? And that person is doing the map. And that person was saying for months that there's no way that Donald Trump can break the blue wall, right? We didn't break it, we shattered that sucker.
President-elect Trump's senior advisor, Sarah Huckabee, joins me now, and it's good to have you here, Sarah. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Adam.
Is it hypocritical for major television networks and media outlets to decry fake news the way we're seeing this done in regards to what could have been a tragedy and was not? Nobody was injured in Washington, D.C., and then, of course, what happened during the election.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous to try to paint this fake news story, and certainly to attach it to Donald Trump. This isn't something that he's pushed or condoned, and I think we can all agree that fake news is a bad thing, and that's why I think he's been so outspoken against the mainstream media for some of the ludicrous stories that they pushed all throughout the campaign, in particular that he had no path to victory, that he couldn't win, that he wasn't a serious candidate. Day after day after day, he had to deal with fake news stories that didn't have a lot of credibility and push back on those himself, and now he's taking the blame for them from the other side. I think it's a pretty ridiculous sentiment, and hopefully one that he'll continue to push back on.
Did any of the major liberal media outlets raise the mental health issues of the man who brought a shotgun, I believe it was, or a rifle into that pizzeria? Did anyone address his known mental health background?
Not that I have seen, but I think somebody certainly should. Anybody that takes that type of action upon themselves, I think that probably should be looked into, and certainly not something that we should ignore. Look, nobody here wants anyone out there taking the law into their own hands, certainly not from our side. We're the law and order campaign, law and order candidate, and now the law and order president-elect, and so this is certainly not an action that the president-elect would support or condone and push for, no matter what the circumstances are.
All right, let's talk about this. The Dow hit another all-time high today as President-elect Trump's transition team continues to make announcements and interview candidates, including, did you catch this? Al Gore visited Trump Tower today to discuss climate issues as the slot for the head position is open.
I had a lengthy and very productive session with the President-elect. It was a sincere search for areas of common ground. I had a meeting beforehand with Ivanka Trump. The bulk of the time was with President-elect Donald Trump. I found it an extremely interesting conversation and to be continued.
Sarah, danger Will Robinson here, to quote the famous TV show. Is Al Gore, at Trump Tower, is it a good sign or a bad sign, not only for the EPA, but for Democrats and Green, people who would identify as Greenies, that Mr. Gore would be meeting with Mr. Trump?
I think it's a great sign for America. Look, Donald Trump has promised to be somebody that unites our country, that puts American interests first, and he's doing that by talking to people that don't necessarily have agreed with him or supported him in his candidacy. But now that he's the president-elect, he wants to sit down with everybody, with a wide and diverse group of people, and get information from a lot of those people as he's moving forward, building an administration, and a really incredible administration so far at this point. And I think it's a great sign for America, and I think something we should certainly celebrate and be happy about, that he's willing to sit down with people that probably didn't support him during the campaign, and that he's got an open door policy. I think it's a great precedent for the type of president he's going to be.
A perfect example is Jamie Dimon, J.P. Morgan Chase. You know, he's going to be on the strategic policy the council that advises the president. He's a Democrat. He supported Clinton.
Yeah, again, I think it's another great example of the type of leader that we're going to see. We've had an administration over the past 8 years that I don't think anybody would say had much of an open-door policy, particularly from people from the other side. This is a breath of fresh air and something I think that's very needed in Washington. There's been so much gridlock, so much partisan politics, that it's nice to see somebody willing to sit down with people they may or may not agree with on a lot of issues, find some common ground and work together to move all of America forward. And I think that's exactly the type of president we're going to get out of Donald Trump.
Did you see this too? There were a lot of people at Trump Tower today. Representative Kevin Cramer from North Dakota, Representative Mick Mulvaney from South Carolina, Peter Thiel and Ari Fleischer. Tomorrow's meetings include CEO from Exxon Mobil, Rex Tillerson, possible Secretary of State there, right? D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, Iowa Governor Terry Branstad, and LifeSet founder and editor-in-chief Laura Ingraham. She was just on the program last week. So what do you think the next big announcement will be? Are we finally going to find out who Secretary of State, at least who the nominee is going to be?
I think that's probably coming soon. It's a big appointment and certainly something that he doesn't want to rush into and wants to really do his due diligence in talking with each of the potential candidates. But I think he's going to make the right decision at the right time, and particularly focusing on making sure that that candidate and that nominee will be someone that will focus with him on putting America first and putting America's agenda first. And that's a big priority for him, and that's why he's taking his time and making sure he makes the right decision on it.
Sarah Huckabee, I think few people could argue with you. Thank you very much for joining us.